Okay, I'm going to try this again. I apologize. It's very dark in here, but I really don't like turning on the light. So I wanted to come on today because I was finishing some things up from yesterday, and I was noticing this vertigo or sense of dizziness that's been coming through. And it's been on and off for a while. But as I was trying to really work on um, getting some things together, the heaviness and the confusion that came in. So yesterday was a really incredible day. And it wasn't until I went home that I realized there was this Jupiter Neptune thing going on, which is probably what I was feeling. But what I noticed about yesterday was that it was really calling out from within us the energy almost like so deep inside of our bones, so deep inside of ourselves, right? The dreams, the desires, the wishes. It was really drawing that out from within us. And so even though everyone said, okay, this conjunction once in a lifetime, it's a really great time to set these whatever intentions, right? It's more than that. It is the literal kind of atmosphere that we are in right now that is literally drawing that out from within us. And it was interesting because later in the day too, I started to notice it was a beautiful sunny day here. And I really made a point to be outside, but I noticed several hours later it got super gray, and I thought, interesting, right? Because everything felt so possible earlier in the day. And then it was like a wave of energy came in, and it was like, I realized like, this is so intentional. This is so, and I don't want to get on that bandwidth of, see, we are being targeted and attacked, because those things will continue to happen, but we do not have to be affected by it. But for me, what it made me aware of was that these are the two polar opposites that are available to us, right? This ability to be so deeply connected in the energies and feel the truth that is within us actually being active and alive. And then the outer conditioning and the outer circumstances that feel in contrast to what we are feeling. And then our minds start to pick up on that, and it actually starts to shift our body and our energy field to attune to that, right? This is how powerful the brain is. It's not really the brain. I mean, the brain is powerful, but it's more about how we perceive things and the meaning that we give to it that really affects our life. Because what we know and what we understand about the human body, right, is that it is incredibly divine. And the nervous system and the brain is designed to actually cause us to thrive. The problem is, what is the available data that the nervous system has to work with? If we are not consciously putting things in front of it, whether it's physical things or ideas or imagining things, it's going to work with what is readily available, where the least resistance is. And guess what that is? That is your subconscious programming and conditioning. And this is where a lot of mindset work and a lot of kind of coaching work comes into play, right? Because on some level they get this and they understand it from this perspective. But it's so much more than that. So mostly what we've been experiencing in our lives, right, has been the trauma, has been the negativity. And so we have taken that and tried to make sense of it, tried to make meaning out of it in order to understand our place in this world and in this reality, right? So it goes to follow that we would start to create understanding around it, and we would start to create a belief system that certain things are true, which may not actually be true and real, right? But yesterday was a massive turning point for us, and it really marked it's almost like a pivot point, right? Almost like, when the marching band comes around a corner, right, and has to kind of whip. So the one who's the closest on the inside is only having to do these kinds of steps, right? But the one that's all the way out there has to take these huge steps. That's kind of what we're in, right? So it's like if you're feeling whipped around, like those are the parts and pieces of us that's still trying to figure this all out. Because what I actually started to see as I was recording another light language thing, there is this inner balancing that is trying to happen. The problem is we're like in this convergence of two different energy fronts meeting into each other, right? There's the truth of who we are. There's the truth that we have always held inside of us, but which has not been fully activated. And it only hasn't been fully activated. I know this is going to sound crazy, but it hasn't been fully activated because we haven't brought our awareness there. And of course, right, there are other things that would have distracted us from bringing our awareness there. And the conditioning and programming makes us distrust what we already know to be inside of us, right? So it's many things, and yet it's one thing at the core, which is that when we bring our awareness there or shine our light or however you want to refer to it, right, that is what makes it active. So yesterday was as if a huge hole opened up, right, in our crowns, in the earth, whatever it is, to illuminate this sense within yourself. All possibilities, the potential for all of these things to be fully activated, right? So hopefully you grabbed onto some of that. And if you didn't, you still can. You can still go back to that energy, right? And feel that. That feeling, that essence is what is most important, right? And we know that the brain doesn't know the difference between what is actually occurring and what we imagine, right? So we can go back and put ourselves in that place, call that into us, and activate our reality based on that, right? So again, yesterday, massive opening, right? And then, yes, there was a reaction to that opening. So if you felt that way, right, it could have felt like like the highest high ever. And then this kind of gradual just decrease into this low. Just know what you're picking up on is how this reality actually functions energetically, which is that there is going to be a response, right? We are always responding to what we are seeing, to what we are feeling, to what is moving through us. The mind is the thing that tells us, it doesn't tell us actually, but we have created this, right? The mind is a thing which judges. It will judge something as good or bad. Yes, I want more. No, I want less. No, I want it like this. Or why can't it be like this, right? That is the mind's job. But where do we not fully understand this? And then it's actually working against us, right? When we start to judge things as being negative. And then we say, oh my goodness, it's negative. Like we're not supposed to take it in. We're just supposed to use it as an observing mechanism, right? To observe. And then we internally say, yes, more, no less, this way or that way, right? So yesterday was this brilliant opportunity to experience that full range of it, right? And then we could have either slid down into kind of a depression of like, oh God, it's still the same. Nothing has really changed. And yet everything has changed, right? So yeah, we need to talk about how we relate with one another too. This is the huge piece, right? This is, yeah, that's good. Because it is like my sense the other day, actually, like over the weekend, was a sense of like defragging the hard drive, right? Making room, making space for a whole new set of programs to come in. But the programs where our heart, your love is the operating system and the driver, right? So yesterday when I was sitting there, and it wasn't until I went back later and I started to think about what happened, I realized actually what I was doing was almost going through my memories of the last, um, well, I don't know, maybe my entire like life so far, but I realized the moment I was sitting at was a turning point because I was looking back and I was realizing that somewhere along the way I made an unconscious, subconscious decision, right, of something that I wanted. And then everything that occurred as a result of that was the universe moving in alignment with this wish or this dream that I had made, but I didn't know I made it, right? So my perception of everything that happened along the way was that it was negative. Life was falling apart. Everything was going wrong. This isn't what I had wanted. This wasn't my plan when I made these decisions way back then, right? But I was at this point where I was like, hold on a second. I'm sitting here now and I'm feeling the memory of what I felt back then, which was the very moment where I made that call, that desire. I allowed it to come through me. Again, I didn't know it and I didn't remember it, right? But I was also very much aware, though, that at this point, because we are here, we're now also casting forward again, like, but it's in a different way, right? It's like we are not within these trauma fields anymore. We are now within the opportunity to experience our life in a much different way from a much different perspective, right? So it's like launching that, or really casting that kind of, um, almost this feeling of fishing, right? Casting that out into the water and pulling that through all the way back to ourselves. And this is really what the planetary energies, the universal energies were picking up on yesterday. There was this call out. And so remember what you were thinking or what you were feeling or what you were asking for or what was bringing you joy, because it really was as simple as, driving past and watching people, on the sidewalk enjoying themselves and really taking delight in that. Like that is a cue to the universe that that is something you want for yourself, right? So remember the things that bring you joy because those are signals. And your nervous system is picking up on that. And your nervous system is going to work to bring you those things. So, where then does our brain and its judgments of what we are observing in our own lives start to get in the way of us allowing and accepting these things to flow through to us, right? And for most of us, it's going to be constant right now until we really kind of figure this out and realize, like, oh my God, I forgot what I had asked for. I didn't even realize I was asking for that. And now I see it and now I get it. And now can I understand that I am always being held and supported. I am always acting in my own best interest. It's my mind and the way that I'm perceiving it and the label I feel I need to give it. And mostly we give it labels in order to be able to communicate it to other people, which means that really what we're doing is giving it labels in order to justify the way we're afraid other people may be perceiving what's happening in our lives, right? Which is all fine and well if we're all operating in these negative systems. And for a long time we have been, except we're not anymore. And this is really the call that I'm receiving, is that something has changed and something has shifted. And there's going to be a lot more mental confusion and people coming up, right? So where we start to bump into people, and it comes up almost as being like a lag in the system, which is funny because that's why I switched computers. A lag in the system, right? Because when you approach someone from the purest range of who you are, it's not just their energy, right? The body itself has been, I love this example, right, of being formatted or reformatting, but the body, the brain itself has created those neural pathways, right? And the nervous system itself is designed to look for the path of least resistance when we are not telling it what we are wanting it to do, right? Or what we are wanting it to find. So the path of least resistance is going to be where those neural patterns are already existing, right? And our body has been conditioned and programmed to look for things that feel safe, that have told us they are safe, and to basically ignore things which are not within our range of understanding, because those are unsafe, because we don't already have the patterns to move through it easily. Right? So where was I going with that? I totally lost the thought. At any rate, oh yeah, right. Speaking of like not being able to connect, right? So we need to understand that there may be people. It is like I keep getting this like buffering, right? Like we may be now noticing that when we interact with people, there's going to be like a lag, because they're automatically going to be primed to go into the existing neural patterning that they have, and yet you're coming from a place which is constantly rewriting its patterning. So for this other person to sync up with you in order to be able to communicate, in order to be able to interact, it's going to take a moment, because those old neural patterns are not going to work engaging with this new system, right? And it's going to feel a bit awkward and uncomfortable as people start to get pulled out of it, right? In the beginning, it's going to be a bit like, I don't know if my mouth will actually move and form the right words to speak kind of feeling, right? And yet all of this is also happening like in split seconds, right? So we may see it because sometimes, right, we can see the movement of energy, we can anticipate it even before we come in contact with it. So sometimes it feels like there's a greater lag than there actually is in physical real time. There was a movie, I forget the name of it, with Sandra Bullock. Maybe no, it wasn't. I forget the name of it, but there was this really beautiful scene where it was as if she was in a storm, right? So everything just kind of slowed down and was swirling around her. Excuse me, my throat keeps drying out as I'm talking. So that she could fully take, it was like she was able then to fully take in the experience of what was moving around her, right? Even though excuse me, I apologize. Even though the other person wasn't experiencing it the way she was experiencing, right? So essentially they were in the same place, but having two different experiences around it. So all of this to also say, give me 1 second. I have to, sorry. Okay, my apologies. Oh my goodness. And I started heating up really bad too. So, but this is what I was feeling today. It's like the energies were just completely crazy in terms of almost resistance to wanting to come in to even talk about this. Okay, so actually, I'm going to work on this because, like, I can feel almost like a throbbing coming up to. See if I can get this out first. I was noticing, so I am sick. I'm pretty sure I have that thing that's going around. Interesting what I noticed about it, and I had noticed this in a couple of sessions I had done when people were sick. This one in particular, when you focus on the symptoms, it actually makes the symptoms worse. And that was really the first time where I felt like I had to almost ignore the symptoms that the body was expressing and come into the core of the energy field and really facilitate support for the nervous system, right? The natural processes that the body is capable of doing to support its own self, right? And that's really where the focus needed to be. And that's also Yeah, no, not The Lake House. It was an older movie, although I love that movie too. Sorry. So, that just brought up something else though. That's interesting. Okay, you guys are all mentioning that movie, but that like it just brought another. That's a whole other thing. I think that's wanting to come through too. I know that's like that time travel one, right? Interesting. Okay. Um, okay. There's so many things coming in. I'm just gonna finish this last thought though, because see now this helped clear up the throat too. The energy that of focusing on the symptoms, right? But this has to do with interacting with people right now too. If we are focusing on kind of the distorted way they may be coming through or what's coming out from within them, we will, our light, our vibration, our focus upon that, it's like a projector. It will increase that, right? So we have to make sure that we are really staying within our own selves and our own energy. This doesn't mean don't interact with people. What I mean is that hold true to that within you, even if what you're starting to experience may start to sway you to want to defend yourself or go in a different direction with it. Like that's that vertigo, right? That's that spinning. We're trying to find our center within ourselves, and we're also trying to find our center within another atmosphere that is spinning, right? So it's like this gyroscope kind of effect, finding two layers of balance here now. So this is different than what we've been doing in the past, where it was just, okay, where am I in my own field, in my own body? We are now operating in conjunction with things that are continuously spinning around us, right? So it's even more vital and important that you understand where you find this within yourself, how you feel this within yourself. Because to focus, as I said, on the disorientation even within your own self or others, or the distortion, is going to heighten that effect, right? So, the other thing I want to say is that there is time and there is space for this to happen. So, if you've also been experiencing a sense of urgency for some weird, like, or anxiousness, right? It comes through the body as anxiousness. I've been getting that a lot because then I'm like, oh, what do I need to go do? And I actually only feel better if I pull back into my own space, right? I don't know what the rest of the world is doing. I don't know what the rest of the world is going through, but I have to come in here and I have to do it from my own space. And the thing is, like, this is what we're here to do right now. This is where, this is, I can't get this out properly. It's going to sound ridiculous. This is where we are to be right now, is coming from within our own selves. And yet it's like there is a weird sense of it's not as crazy as maybe it has been in the past right now in terms of like external circumstances, but there's an energetic spinning and craziness out there, right? Because people are trying to also find their sense of center, they just don't know it. So the telepathy is it's huge right now, actually. So here's the thing, right? I've said since last August that this year, this whole year from August to August, is going to be about learning how to work with our own selves, right? And it's totally true. The thing is that we have received a lot of, well, we've picked up ideas about how these things should feel and work as a human in this realm. And a lot of that information is inaccurate, right? So even when I think about telepathy, like there's a weird idea of like, I should just hear the voice in my head, right? Or like, how do I, how do I cultivate telepathy? The thing is, it's innate within us. It's already there. It's already online. we just don't necessarily know what it feels like, right? So this is where having an experience sometimes helps us to kind of hook into it and link into it. And it's getting more intense because the carrier energies that are in the atmosphere, the densities are losing their power and their energy. Like, this is how I see it, because I know people say the systems need to come down, right? That's actually kind of like just a byproduct of what's energetically going on. Like, whether they actually come down or not physically really isn't going to matter, because what's happening is that it's almost like there's been a whole other type of energy here, which is maybe what people would call the matrix, but it has carried and used the distorted energies to fuel it, right? So it's like this viable energy that has been created because it's based on systems of distortion, and it's based on people not sourcing from their own energy fields, right? So there is a need, a desire, and an availability of it, but it's losing, like, the more that more and more of us pull off of it and out of it, it loses its power, it loses its source. So that what's happening then is that the other energies that are truly sourced from within us, we start to notice it and feel it and experience it more, right? Which is why it starts to feel like I have stronger telepathy, which is why it starts to feel like I have stronger connections to people. It's not necessarily that. It's that insulating energy is losing its power, actually. So, yeah, it's one of the most, and this is where, and this is probably actually what's creating a lot of this, or is going to create. Okay, that's what it is. Where I was saying, just kind of be aware of other people being in this confusing place, because it's exactly this. It's because we are able to feel the true energies now on a deeper level, right? So, and just the other day, I had someone walk into my office and I started to almost panic and feel very insecure. And I thought, oh my God, here I go again. What's wrong with me? And I realized afterwards, I was like, oh, it wasn't me. It was this person. And as many times as, okay, I know I'm affected by energy, right? It's like those experiences are becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. So again, we have to know ourselves. We have to know how to feel that we are inside of our own selves, right? So that these things don't continue to spin us out. Just as an example, too, so my daughter, animals have always been drawn to her, in particular dogs, just absolutely love her, to the point where I almost kind of like have to, okay, get ready, because this dog's going to come and the owner's going to freak out because they're going to think the dog is misbehaving, right? So we're always kind of like bracing for the moment where the dog breaks to connect with her. And we were driving the other day, and I had noticed this dog as we were driving, and then we ended up, kind of where the dog was on her side. And it was behind us a little bit, but I looked over and I saw, like, through the back passenger window that the dog was like zeroed in on her. And the windows were closed and they're tinted in, so you can't really see that well, right? But this dog was like, and so I was like, oh, Faith, look at this dog. And so then I rolled the window down and the dog started barking like crazy. And we've never experienced anything that intense before. Like, they see her through car windows. Yes, they will pick up on her energy. But this was like, that dog was like, I want to connect. And so it just started barking like crazy when I rolled down the window. And I almost felt bad, right? Because it was like, what's wrong with this dog? You would think that we had a dog in the car too, but that wasn't the case. And then there was an instance later where we were driving and she had seen a dog like on the other side down the road, right? But she's like, oh my God, the dog is so cute. And it was like bouncing along. And all of a sudden it just turned and stopped and looked right in her direction. And I was like, I think it heard you say that. Like, and it stopped right at that moment and looked directly at her. So again, it's like, it's not that the telepathy is increasing. It's not that the energies are increasing, but it feels that way, right? It's because these other things that have been dampening these natural energies are slowly dissolving. And the sunlight, I was doing this the other day too. The sunlight is one of these things that is so helpful, and it really does help facilitate the dissolving and the breakdown of the distortion, right? And also part of why that is such a program right now, right? To really kind of block that out. And also, no, again, this is going to sound crazy too, but but this is why I gave the example of the dogs, right? Because the dogs couldn't see my daughter physically, but they felt her energy, right? They could feel it. They could feel her effect. And as much as we believe that we live in a physical reality and that the physical reality is what is most important, so to the sunlight, we can connect to the energy of the sunlight energetically, and we can still reap the benefits of that. Right? I know it sounds crazy. It seems a little bit crazy as I'm saying it to you, because I'm like, yeah, but the physical, okay, but underlying all of the physicality is the energy though too, right? So yeah. And I was feeling this the other day, like connecting to the sunlight. I could feel actually my energy shift. I could feel my body start to shift. And as I'm saying it now too, I'm actually feeling the shifting here. Um, Particularly in, I want to say the masculine ranges, which to me is always like the right side of the body, the right side of the energy field, but I'm not even really sure what that means at this point. So, um, except to say, like, what's coming up is again, is this like this sense of dissolving the old atmospheric conditions that have existed here. And these conditions are what we have built the stories and the belief systems on. So, I'm going to talk about two other things. Oh, that's sweet. um, so two things. I want to go back to the nervous system and the brain, and I want to talk about that. And then I also want to talk about, which is really what I tried to title this video, um, that we truly do need one another. I almost want to jump ahead there, but I need to talk about the nervous system and the brain again. This is where the closest thing we see to it right now is kind of that, and I hate to even say these things, right? But like law of attraction and manifestation work. Um, and really that's what coaching is too, right? I read something the other day which I thought was really brilliant. It was talking about, well, it was really saying how like therapy is good, right? But in therapy, we're always looking back at the past to try to make sense of where we are. And that's kind of where therapy ends, right? Coaching is the thing where we look to the future and we say, what do we want to be and what do we want to call into our future, right? And I feel like in the spiritual world and these realms, we're kind of like stuck right here where we're like, okay, yeah, we're so interested in looking at the past and what has caused all of this distortion. And it's almost like we have forgotten, even though this is what spirituality talks about being a creator being, right? It's almost like we've forgotten how to be a creator being within this body that clearly we have experienced the negative sides of creation through, right? So, yeah, why are we stuck here at this point? This is where I'm getting. This is this zenith point, right? This is what I was talking about, like this convergence of like every possibility here right now. It really opened this up in our hearts. That we are creators. We are the creators of our reality. Yes, we can create shitty things when we are stuck in systems that have shitty things going on, right? But the power of those things is no longer what it was in the past. And this is where we have to allow for our own truth. We have to allow and give ourselves the time and the space to feel what feels true when we say it, when we feel it, instead of trying to run it through some other system, which includes our mind, right? Because the mind is a product of all of that. And this is where we have to tell ourselves sometimes, stop, like that is not true. You know that's not true. You've had enough experiences now to believe your own truth. So where we are at now is this very kind of momentous point where we can start to test this out and see the truth of it, right? It's not that karma is moving faster, right? It's not that the effects of our behavior is more intense. It's that the resistance that has existed in this reality is less, right? So to be more mindful about how we think and what we think. And I've said this for a long time, that we've gotten away with a lot of things we really shouldn't be getting away with up until this point, right? And in some ways that's good, but in other ways, especially if we're wanting to create a different reality, right? It's time to let go. And it's time to know. It's time to know who you are. It's time to know who you are in this reality. And it's time to allow those parts and pieces that you were deeply connected to when you were younger, right? Allow those to have a voice again. Allow those things to resurface from beneath the water. Because those energies, that way of being, the truth and the joy and the unbridled presence that you felt as a child, right? That is what we are. That is what we are to be here. And some of this pain and pressure right now is kind of combing through the things we have allowed to dictate who we are supposed to be. We are combing through the things that we allowed ourselves to take on, which there's no way we couldn't have, right? So it's not about shame. And yet, when we don't see it from that perspective, we will kind of self-induce that shame. I mean, it's just what happens with the human, right? But this is what I'm wanting to tell you, like, let it go. Let it go. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. It didn't make sense. And the only way forward is to let those things go now, right? So if we are holding on to things and feeling guilty about dropping old stuff, it will feel more painful. It's not because you're wrong. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's not because who you are is somehow wrong for this world. It's because those are just things that are so deeply ingrained, and that's the programming, right? And a lot of what I really see is that so much of this, even though we have human systems and programs here that tell us, like, oh, your self-worth, oh, you have to love yourself more, oh, you have to cultivate a sense of self, and blah, and that's your problem. Like, I don't see it coming from this human reality very much at all. They are galactic things that we have struggled with. And, you know, again, there are certain things that I say over and over that I do not know why I say them. But they start to appear more and more true in the physical reality, right? And one of them is that we are actually here to heal things from beyond this reality, things that we are connected to energetically that have to do with other planets, other universes, other dimensions, right? And part of me wonders if why we've been struggling so much is because we're actually not acknowledging that. And I know for me that's very true, right? I do energy work, and yet I'm also the last person, because I'm like, I just want to make it human. How can I make this more human? It's like, that's actually not working anymore. I have to become more other, more beyond human. And then that serves my human. That helps my human. My humanness, right? Being in this physical body. I'm actually getting so much pressure with this right now that I had a teacher who would always say, and I had forgotten about it up until this point. He said, okay, if you're doing a clearing and it's not working, go broader, go bigger, like go collective, right? For me, when I feel that, I always want to go to the galactic origin of it, right? Whatever it is. I don't, and that word, I don't even necessarily know what it means, but right, star systems, star beings, whatever. And I feel like this is what we're bumping into right now is the need to recognize ourselves, right? I don't like using these words. Like I have such a huge resistance to Starseed. And I think because there's been so much that has been kind of like co-opted around that, right? And so many people in the past have used that as like, oh, I am an admiral on a starship and this is who I am. And I'm here to like tell you, like, and a lot of that was bullshit because it was a way to hook people in to a lot of these weird energies, and actually to hook them into connecting to energies beyond themselves when, yes, we have a relationship with those energies, but that is not what it's what we are, but it's not what is driving our energy field. It is not the seed of our experience as a human here, right? Like we can relate to those things and we can work with them, but that is not the thing that makes the choice. And so I think a huge part of the story for so long has been, let's connect to the galactics. They're going to save us, right? Or the energy is going to come in and it's going to shift everything. And it's like, great, that's wonderful, except you're in a physical human body, which is an energy system in and of its own self. And so this energy system has to interact with other energy systems. And so you have to animate that, right? And if you're not animating it, what is? Something else is, right? It's picking up on other ideas and other thoughts and other ways of being, and it's just kind of defaulting to that. And yet this is the very place where we have been so disconnected and so targeted in order to give this power away, right? And it's yes, it's free will, and yes, it's choice. It's all kind of the same thing. And it is free will and free choice in alignment with our hearts, right? We brought in something very, 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 very specific to work with, to be within. It's not just for humanity. It's not just for other people here. It's first and foremost for ourselves. And God, it's like, it's actually like really brilliant, right? Like what we need, the healing that we need is right here. And it's what we need to be. And it's also what we need to be for everything else, everyone else here too, right? It's like that story about like, well, I'll hide it inside of them because they'll never think to look there, right? And it's so true. So, yeah. And okay. Here's the thing I think that is so important to embrace. We've always been consciously aware on some level, whether we were conscious of it or not, right? That has always existed there. I'm just seeing it get darker and darker in here, but I think I'm just going to leave it. So we've always known about negativity. We've always known about programming. We've always known about trauma, right? And we've always known the negative effects that can cause and that can have. So in some ways, in our minds, we think we know all there is to know about where we're going. And we actually don't, because what we have lived through up until this point has allowed our body, it has allowed us to understand as a consciousness how the body functions in a certain environment, right? With certain systems or whatever it may have been that you experienced. And now it is actually your soul essence and your soul consciousness that is taking over. That is really, I don't want to say overriding, right? But it is really in charge now. So up until this point, there's been this human idea that, okay, eventually things will get easier and then I'll be able to just like live my life and all of this knowing that I have acquired. Except it's not that. We really have switched over into something much greater and much more profound. And maybe unknowingly you've been asking for this. This was your purpose in being here, whether or not you consciously know this and understand this yet, right? So really, this resistance is us just still fighting against our own selves. And I always want to reiterate, there are very good reasons for fighting against our own selves, right? So yeah, okay, this feminine range, there's a range here in the feminine. I feel it in the sacral that is like, no, I know everything already. I got it. I know it. This is how I'm going to move forward. And this is what I want to say to that. It's we do not have the answers in the sense that we can go out and be like, this is what physically needs to happen. These are the steps to take, right? But we have the system inside of us. We are the system that knows how to navigate what we will encounter physically, right? So it's always finding that kind of true north. Like that is what we have and that is what we possess. And that's all you ever really need. Well, it is all you need here, right? And then again, the experience of having that mucked up so badly up until this point. I don't know why it's coming through so strongly like this. It's almost like a caution to, you don't know everything there is to know, and you're not supposed to know everything there is to know, and you don't actually need to know everything there is to know, because what you need in the moment will arise through you. And if you don't have this is the time and space component. If you don't have the answer, by virtue of asking the question, the answers will be brought to you. Right? This is how the nervous system works. And this is something that I don't know, I accidentally stumbled across this weird like way of working with my own self, my own, I guess, subconscious, you would say, right? But it started when I was doing some journaling. I was going through a really awful time. And I started writing down, this was someone else's program of like, write down all of your resentments and fears, right? Every day. And I was like, that's a little scary to like acknowledge all these things, right? But what started to happen was that it actually started to clear out my subconscious. And then in the course of doing all of this kind of writing and journaling, I started to ask questions, right? Like, what's going on with this situation? Or like, what is this weird feeling I keep having? Like, I don't understand why it keeps coming up, right? And I would find that over the course of the next day, sometimes but it was rare that it took like a week or 2 weeks, right? It was usually within the next day or so that I would either see a video or I would read something or I would just have an awareness around it, a very deep understanding where it was like my system was answering my own questions. But what was really happening was that in offering the question, right, that kind of throwing out the fishing line, I was pulling it in through myself. But you have to be asking the right question, right? And that's something I realized too. Like we are programmed to ask the wrong fucking questions. We are programmed to think wrong. We're asking the question that serves the system, right? Not the question that serves us. Like, oh, how can I make it so that so and so doesn't get so upset with me? No, like it looks like maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Like we keep getting into a fight, right? So I need to figure out like what can I do to not create the argument? It's like, no, actually, what is the energy inside of me that keeps getting triggered around this particular thing, right? Looking deeper and deeper and deeper inside, and we clarify, we ask questions. If we don't get an answer to that question, we need to reformulate it, right? Reformat it in a different way to find the thing that is stuck inside of us. So I know I'm going off in a bunch of different directions, but there's something in this feminine range, right? Like, and there are energies like this is kind of where I think people will talk about the Akashic records, right? Like that it's something outside of us that holds like a library of information about us. But truly, that is all held within us. And that is also where we will loop through patterns of experiences that we perceive to be bringing us negative things, right? So when we start to feel this inside, when we feel safe enough to start asking the right questions about what's going on inside of us, that's when we really start to see things shift. Because we have been conditioned to fear being inside of our own selves, and we've been conditioned to fear engaging with the truth of who we are. And we have been conditioned in that way because looking to something else or someone else for the answers, well, I mean, what I'm actually hearing, I wasn't going to say it this way, but it's like it's big money making schemes, right? We know this whole world runs on money. It's not the truth of it, but it's the way it's been set up, because people have seen an advantage to things being that way, right? So in the end, it all does come down to the money, right? Follow the money because that's where you find the answer. Okay, but anyway, I digress. This, I'm starting to wonder because I always would see, what would I call it, like the webbing. Like it would look like a webbing, like in the interstitial, like in between, right, in the air, like in the space of the body, almost like the fascia, right? But like, I mean, in some ways, that's a great representation because that connects into every part of the body. And yet, this is really what I would say. Okay, so there are memories that we hold within us in relation to other, it's coming through as, I wanted to say, like, because there's two words here, right? There is this emergence, but it's like other emergencies. So other experiences where there was a sense of that urgency. Okay, this is why it's coming up so strongly, because there were a couple comments and a couple times I felt this, right? And I said, like, there's an anxiety coming up in the body. There's like a sense of urgency, and how I was saying I needed to pull back, right? What's really happening is that we're picking up on deep, they're deeply stored, but they deeply affect the concept, our self concept, who we believe ourselves to be at the core. And that also it's not just, okay, all right, this is, sorry. There's so many layers. Every time I go into it, it's like another layer shows up here. So, for example, like when we talk about, this is something that was coming up for me very greatly. It was like the galactic wars and all this stuff, right? Yes, there are memories and energies that we have connected to, that we, and oftentimes we were there, right? We had these negative experiences. But the issue is not those experiences per se, because we should be able to clear that out easily, right? The issue is where this is this carrier tone, right? Like I was saying, even in this reality, in this atmosphere, there's a carrier tone that keeps things in place that are not organic. There is the same, right? Sometimes we'll call them implants, suggestions, right? Things were inserted into those places where there already was a wound. And they're like alternate energies, which had nothing to do with us per se, but we believe that they did, right? And those are the things that are really confusing and hard to heal because we can't think our way around them and they don't really make sense, right? So there's suggestions that were implanted into the energy field. Oh my goodness, I feel this about who you are. And it's these pieces which are really like this kind of, like they create this short or stop in the energy. Okay. I feel it. Like it's in the back of the neck, but it's like right above, like where it would meet into the body there, like right above the shoulders. It's really painful. I almost started to get the image of like the Matrix plug, right? But it's like it looks like that, and then it had this spinning quality to it, but it's lower than that. Okay, so I also wanted to talk about relationships. Right? Oh my god, my heart just starts to like. And the fact is that we do. Like need isn't the right word. It is inherent within our design to connect. I mean, the funny thing is like we are connected to one another, right? Our energy fields, we can't not connect energetically. Like, and it makes me laugh because oh my god, the crazy making that we've been through, right? Of like put up boundaries, clear your energy field, don't let people in, and if you're feeling stuff, it's because you're not doing it right. How maddening is that? How maddening is that? That it creates this sense of, again, like I'm wrong, I'm doing it wrong. I must have too much love. I have too much love and it's not even wanted here. Uh-huh. And this thing, and I'm just going to talk about it in terms of intimate relationships, right? Because this is where we see it most clearly. And I really feel this is the thing that is, yeah, okay. And that's actually why apparently the purpose for speaking today is, and it's funny, right? Because it's taken me this long to even get here, which is all this resistance in the fields here. I'm just letting some things clear here through the fields because there's a lot of pain around misinformation. The pain has grown because of the misinformation, right? So, and it goes back to these concepts of like, you know, you have to be whole and complete on your own before you can have a healthy relationship. And I understand where those concepts originated from because when you experience unhealthy relationships, right? You experience negativity, you experience abusive relationships, you experience such huge levels of manipulation and narcissism and whatever it might be, right? The only way to get yourself out of those patterns is to go to the extreme other end of it, right? And it's hard to talk about because there is value in that at some point in time. But to understand that there is healthy need and there is unhealthy need. But when we take unhealthy need, and that's not the right way to say it either, when we take our experience in negative systems and we attempt to explain it through another system, and then we remove ourselves out of that experience in that system, we are still taking this system of trying to understand what happened with us when we say we have to be whole and complete on our own. Okay, because the truth is you were already whole and complete, but you were existing in a fucked up system, right? But then in order to understand you were in a fucked up system, we told you this thing, right? So you came here. And maybe we needed that understanding to get out of that experience, right? But what happened is we should have come out of that experience and said, that was a fucked up system. And I was always okay, right? But instead, it's like we took it and we swung it over here now. And we're still trying to understand human relationship and human reality through a system. Sorry. Which is trying to make sense of something that is not organic. So, okay. Oh my God, I can feel this in the head. Because what's happening in these situations is that I suppose I called it a healthy need. What's really happening is that we are not fully coming from a place of knowing who we truly are, right? We have been conditioned. We're reacting to the conditioning. We're reacting through the conditioning that we've learned in an attempt to connect with another person. So that our behavior and the person that we were showing up as, let's say, in that relationship was not the truth of ourselves, right? Because we were not operating from our own core. But it feels like what we do when we say, okay, we need to be whole and complete on our own. It's like we're still taking the modified version of ourselves, right, that existed in that situation, and then telling the modified version, you need to be whole and complete. But we're doing it within this mental range where we're still not connected to the truth of who we are. Anyway, I don't know if this is making sense. It's really hard to speak in words about what's going on here. Okay. Because then what happens, right, is that we have all these things like attachment theory, which is really, really wonderful. It's important. Again, it's a stage in our understanding, though, to get back to the core of who we are. Okay, and this goes back to what I said way earlier in this, which is that be cautious when you are interacting with people and you feel like perhaps you're getting triggered because they're not understanding you, or they are maybe not, they're like buffering, right? Or they're still defragging. They're trying to get up to speed with these energies, because this is how I feel it. This is how I've been seeing it. Every interaction that I experience with another person where they seem like they are upset, what I have come to understand is that these are all bids for connection. These are all coming from a place of, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I'm not being seen. I'm not being heard. I'm struggling. I don't even know how to get through. All of it is an attempt to be seen for who they truly are. And we do this too, right? So in my own relationship, I started to study all this attachment stuff, right? And so then I was like, well, all right, when this person says something, I have to make sure that I, stop them, help them understand, where they're coming from, where I'm trying to come from, like da da da. And that was absolute crazy making. What really shifted, when it really started to change and really take off for me, was where I continually stepped back. And no matter what was being said to me, or the anger or the energy or whatever, I stepped back out of it and I just said, okay. And then I came back in and whatever the situation was, okay, so you're not feeling heard. Okay, so let me just explain what I was thinking. Okay, it wasn't about needing to figure out a different way to navigate a relationship or a human connection, right? It was about, again, it's like a sense of peeling through the layers, right, to get to the core. Because people are so also programmed and primed for us to react to their reactions, right? This is what the nervous system does. What we are truly doing is dropping into the pure nervous system, if you will, because this was something I actually forgot I had connected with last week. It was like the nervous system itself showed up to me, and I was like, which is a little weird, right? Because it looks like a big bunch of roots and trees and whatever. And I thought, okay, there's really something here. And this is really what we're doing. The purity of the nervous system, right? That is primed to receive the organic, that feeling, right? When you're right on with you, oh, this, right? This truth, like it is actually primed to receive that to the core. And it is actually designed to be able to receive that in such a way that it can cut through everything else that's around it. So all of this like attachment theory and all of this, like, let's look at our negativity and our trauma and all that. It actually, I know it's been needed up to a certain point, but it's really inefficient. It's like an old, outdated way, because truly the nervous system is designed to grab on to the truth of the soul, to the truth of the energy system, like in those truly organic forms. And so we can really cut through a lot of the bullshit when we understand this, right? That this is the best example I have at this point, right? Like, this is how I've been working with it. As I said, no matter what is coming towards me, who is reacting to me, the way it's coming through, I recenter, I give it a pause, and I try to clarify whether I need clarification or I need to say something to clarify it for them, right? Knowing in every moment, actually what's happening is that we are seeking love and connection. Okay, this is the truth of the nervous system. It's love and connection. If we wanted to describe the energy, right? It is connection that the nervous system is actually seeking out. And then, of course, we can look at it through those understanding of survival, right? Like, what is safe? Well, of course, we want to look for what is safe because we are wanting to connect, right? But then it's taken on a whole other life of its own in terms of what is negative and what is unsafe. But the more that we can communicate with our systems in this way, the more you're going to start to see the energy actually evolve, like in this kind of, I almost want to say supernatural way. But this has been my experience of it. To not let my mind get stuck by what I think I'm seeing and hearing from the other person, right? And this kind of goes back earlier too, where we said like the telepathy, right? Connecting with other people. It's like suddenly we're realizing what we're feeling is not even any of us. It's everything else around us, right? And we're confused as to what's going on with me because it feels so freaking real inside of us, right? So, and I was laughing a second earlier because I was like, oh, it's not, again, it's like not about how much have we studied about energy and spirituality. This is what the body is designed to do. And the body is going to continue to do this, whether we like it or not, because this is what it means to be a human, right? The body is designed to pull energies towards it, which, yes, are of its own likeness, but It is incredibly divinely intelligent, and it knows what is best for it. And the nervous system, okay, this is going to sound a little bit crazy too, but the nervous system is engaged with, okay, all right, this goes back to why I was talking about the Akash in the body, right? The nervous system is actually like plugged in and engaged with your energy field. Therefore, it knows your history, right? It knows your energetic history. Therefore, wouldn't it follow that if you came in here with a very specific energetic mission, your nervous system is on your side? Your nervous system is rooting for you. Your nervous system knows what experiences you need to clear these things out that are what we would say are blocking our path, right? Are blocking our experience, are blocking our ability to be on mission. Oh my goodness. When we say that we are divinely guided, I don't know if you can feel this, right? The human word of saying I am divinely guided gives me a sense that there's some other force beyond me that knows what's best for me. When we say I am divinely guided, can you feel it's in your cells? It's in your DNA. That the way it's coming through is there's a purpose and there is a mission to your path. Okay. There's other energies here. I can feel these coming in, like almost trying to cap the fields. It's something that I don't know how prevalent this is, like in the spiritual communities, but I heard it quite a bit over the last few weeks of like, your purpose is just to be alive. Your purpose is just being here. Like, you don't have to have a big mission. You don't have to, um, change jobs or change careers. Like, just being alive is enough. And I actually don't know if that statement is true or not. I know for myself that is not true. I know for myself that it's the other way around. My reason for being here is that I have a mission. And I feel that is true for all of you and for, if not everyone here. Like, okay, hold on a second, actually, because who's saying that? Spiritual leaders are saying that. And what benefit are they getting by saying, settle down now, don't think you're that important and that you have a big old mission here to fulfill? Okay. What does it mean to be an energetic being? What does it mean to be a light field? Nobody owns me as a soul. They try to, they want to, they probably have in the past, right? My purpose for being here is my purpose. It doesn't mean I don't have a purpose in life. My purpose for being here is to evolve my soul in whichever way I choose to, right? But that is my mission and that is my purpose. And that is the purpose for every soul for being here. And so to say that on some level, some souls have bigger missions or more important missions, or they have missions where they're supposed to be, I don't know, leading or something in relation to, I don't know, smaller souls, less evolved souls. Like, how are you going to sit here and tell me that a new soul, let's just say there's a soul who's never been here on earth before, or it's their first life. I don't even know if those things are possible, right? But let's just say that there's a soul here who, like, they're only in their third life, right? On no planet and no universe would I ever say that that soul's purpose and mission is any less than someone who has been here, you know, for hundreds of lifetimes at all. Like, it can't even exist. Your purpose for being here is to evolve your soul. And that is a huge mission. And the other thing that's so huge about it is that where this planet is in this lifetime, in this particular point in time, right? If you are here, it's because you knew this. I feel like I'm almost levitating. That was weird. The availability of energies here right now is to propel, again, it's that sense of like supernatural or superpowers, right? Propel your evolution to such a huge degree. So this is where I want to come back to the don't think you know everything there is to know. It's not, I'm not trying to be rude about it at all. It is this I just lost the thought that came through. Shoot. It's to not look at any of this stuff like it's like we've emerged out of a cell, right? Or a black box. And like everything that we have researched and learned and known about, like, for example, for me, right? It's been very much about trauma. It's been very much about mind control. It's been very much about the way this programming gets passed on through generations, through parents, all this kind of stuff, right? Like, I would think that's the direction my work should continue. Like, okay, now I got it. I'm going to like write all this stuff. I'm going to create all these classes. I'm going to make all this information known. And yet it's like, actually, I don't think I need to. And I don't even think that's the point, right? The point is like, that's the experience I walked through. That's the experience I was born into. And I needed to learn it to understand what my human vessel experienced, how my mind, how my brain, how my systems got programmed the way that they got programmed, right? But that's not also the truth of how the body wants to be and how the energies are supposed to be, right? So what would it necessarily serve to talk about these old systems anymore? To teach about them or preach about them. On some level, there is importance in understanding them, right? But moving forward, it's more about what are we actually capable of and how do we actually do that? And because what it feels like is happening is that our energy fields are actually being repopulated to a certain degree. And this is where I think I was feeling all this through the feminine range of the field, right? Let's just say we have like an energetic blueprint, right? Let's just say like this is our soul. This is who we are. There's like a blueprint here. And I came in like this has been my evolution up to this point, right? And I've used that here to move through this human body, to understand the human body and the human experience better. What it feels like is happening is that there are higher, there are more potent, there are clearer energies that are coming in now to populate these places where the old energies have been existing, right? Up until now, there was a reason for them to be here, but it feels like that is what is leaving right now. So our concept of who we are as a human, and our concept of who we are as a soul, and our concept of who we are as a soul within a human body is also going to be evolving and growing and changing. And so what I really want to say, maybe rather than don't think you know everything there is to know, is to reserve the opportunity to change your mind about who you think you are and what you think you're here to do. Because it's much greater than what you might have been able to imagine up until this point. And it's certainly much more powerful than what you have yet been allowed to feel and experience about yourself. And where you might be having fear, where, again, we come back to that like anxiousness, right? Know that those like the control is no longer there, actually. I know it feels like it is. It's active and alive in the bodies, right? It's active and alive in the memories and the cells and the DNA. But it's not okay. The threats, right? But this is what so much of these other kind of spiritual systems operate on. And the systems that are keeping those things alive, right? In terms of like dark energies and things attacking you and da da da. It's like, yes, we experienced that. Yes, they were very, very real. And no longer. And yet we need to look at who does that serve to keep those stories alive? And does it even serve us to believe in those things, to it's more a sense of like, we don't want to be disrespectful to things, right? But where we are giving more credit than credit is really due, because the reason those things become so powerful is that we continue to give them our power and our energy. And it goes back to this kind of bioavailability, right? Those things are losing their power because we're pulling our power back from them, right? So what does that really say about them? They are not as powerful as perhaps we have experienced them in the past. They're not as powerful as we've felt to give credit to them in the past. Maybe in the past that was true, but it's also not really true. So how do we talk about that, right? Like, how do we keep those stories alive? Do we keep them as part of our curriculum? Is it serving us based on where we know we want to go? And where we want to go, we may not have an image of, right? But we don't need an image of it. We just need the feeling. And that's really how energy works, right? And it's one of these things, like, we're so afraid of our feelings. We've been so trained to fear our emotions. But that is how the universe speaks. It is how the universe communicates. And this is where, too, I feel those triggers in terms of relationships, right? It's the saddest thing to me to feel this. And I remember this from when I was really little, to being very confused about this sensation. Because there's something in the body when we, well, when you like see someone, or you're connecting with someone, you're really excited to see them, right? And it just like what's really happening is that you're creating new energy, right? You're like giving birth to something in that moment, because it's like two pure energies recognizing one another, right? Something is born, and yet in that very moment of conception and birth, the body has been taught, for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure yet, but it's been taught to fear that expansion. It's a feeling of, it's an energy of expansion, actually. And this must go back to what I was talking about earlier, right? In terms of these systems of trying to understand the negativity in relationships and the bad experiences in relationships. That spark, that creation of new energy, there's shame around it. And this is how it's coming in. Like, I have never seen it like this before, right? But it is literally like giving birth. But I can feel that correlation of, like, when you have a crush on someone, when you were younger, and like that, like, there's also a sense of like, you shouldn't want that because you can't have that. Like, with it, there also comes some level of like, you need to reject it because it's going to repel you, or it's going to reject you. But it's more than that. Like, there's some kind of that spark. And I wonder if it actually goes back to our own kind of like physical conception. And there is like a really heavy energy around it. This sense of, I talk about this a lot, like even before we're conceived, right? Like, there's an energy, there are feelings and emotions, like the parents are experiencing things, right? And a lot of times, let's be honest, like, nobody wants another child because it's expensive, and there's a lot of things that have to change, right? Even though, yes, of course, we're excited and we love them and all those things that we're supposed to do, right? But the reality of it is that it's a problem. And it's been designed to be that way. And it's for this very reason, right? Because there is something about that moment of conception where there's something else that's inserted to make you almost drop, right? To swing to that opposite side of the pendulum. And yet what we don't understand is that every time we connect with someone on a soul level, we connect with an energy on that pure organic level. We are creating more. We are actually evolving, right? We are growing and building and expanding. And there's like a massive windstorm right now, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, outside the window here. I don't want to say we've been designed, but something was designed, right, to reject that pure love within us. And so, yeah, all of these stories about abandonment, and they're not just stories, right? We actually experience this, but again, if we look back, we'll see eventually why this all happened. We've built stories and narratives around these things to try to explain the human condition and relationship, and they're just not true. So what we are essentially doing is, first and foremost, yes, finding our center in ourselves, right? This sense, again, of like the spinning and the dizziness and the vertigo, finding our stability, because we now recognize we're a system within a system, right? But beyond that, it is to connect, and it is to grow, and it is to evolve with one another, through one another. Because it really is true that the physical reality provides us a reference, right? It is a feedback tool that we use, right? Like I said, it's like, I see that, I want more of it, or I think I want less, right? Like, how would we know that unless we actually have that experience, right? So when we connect with other beings, what essentially is happening is that it's an interface now based on our energetic design. And so when we truly connect from this heart space, from this organic, pure range, our inner energetic blueprint, right, is recognizing that in another person. And it's almost like it's giving like this, green light, this go ahead here, to build. Like, I see you, I recognize you. There's a lot of like, I can feel this in the belly. Like, I don't really like want to go here because it feels kind of gross. But like, yeah, there's so like, I think part of it too, right, is that we have been taught these things now, and then we've developed these ways of trying to navigate relationship based on these. And again, yeah, it's like this idea again of like, don't think you know everything there is to know, because so much of what we have learned is just not true. And yet, okay, if what we've been taught is not true, how do we navigate our relationships, right? How do we find? Well, we have to trust the truth we feel inside, except the truth we feel inside, if we were to ask the person sitting across from us, they're going to tell us it's not true, right? Because those defense mechanisms are up. Those ways of trying to get love in unhealthy circumstances are still very much alive and active, right? So it's up to you. It's up to us to hold that line and not back down from it. Because again, every angry tone of voice, right? Every temper tantrum, whatever it might be, is ultimately a bid for connection. And if we continue to speak to the angry outburst and the negative energy, we are only emboldening those distorted systems, right? We are only giving more weight and credibility to things that don't serve us. And I know from experience that when I say, well, don't talk to me in that tone of voice, like I deserve better and this is my boundary, that don't work no more. Because now you're putting someone out, like you are poking their wound and they're going to pull back in. This isn't about being mature. Like our brains are getting rewired. Like there's very little capacity for maturity right now either, right? It's not about like, oh, you're so, you've been through so much, like you should know better than to say that and this and that, right? Like we're melting. We are in that kind of turning from caterpillar into butterfly stage, right? We are all melted and confused right now. So really, what do we have? We have what we feel. We have our hearts. We have what our body knows to be true. And yet we are brought into places where it feels very, very uncomfortable because there's a lot of fear that will come up, right? Of, well, I think this is what they're thinking or feeling or whatever, but I'm actually too afraid to say it because I don't want to appear vulnerable. I don't want to appear needy. I don't want to appear all these things, right? And yet someone has to take the first step. Someone has to do it. And it's you. And that's why you're here. And we have been gifted the opportunity to learn this through our own lives and our own experiences and our own relationships. And that's just the beginning, right? Because there's so much more to do. There's so much more to connect to. And there's so much more to bring in. And as I said, where are we in the world right now? It's April? Okay. So we're kind of in this home stretch to August, which is good. And I hope by that time we'll have a better sense of how we move energetically in this reality. But for now, I would say start to learn to love everything that you feel coming up from inside of you, especially if it feels constricting, especially if it feels like fear, especially if it feels like things we might call negative emotions, right? They are speaking through you for a reason. They are coming up through you for a reason. So sit with them, whether you journal or whether you just meditate, right? Honor the things that are coming up for you because they're not coming up for no reason. And what I kept getting, especially over the last week, is I just have to love myself more. Like, especially when I was thinking about, certain relationships or situations I was struggling with, whatever it was, whether it was like a personal thing or like a financial thing or whatever, it was like, I have to just love myself more. Like that, first and foremost, is the key. Because if I'm not, and it's not about like, oh, I have to love myself because I don't like myself. I'm not talking about that, right? Loving means to me sitting inside of myself and not running away from it, not ignoring it, not distracting myself, right? I just have to be more present with what's coming up here. And I can't look at it as a problem to be solved. I have to look at it as something that I am engaging with and working through. And that in it, I will always be brought more wisdom, more understanding, more expansion. To love yourself, I think I wrote this somewhere today, to love yourself so much that you feel safe enough to trust your own self, right? And this is really the key of everything that has been conditioned out of us, and the key of so much of our grief around trying to connect with other people, right? We don't feel safe enough in our own bodies to say what we really want to say. We don't feel safe enough in our own bodies to trust what we're really feeling. We don't feel safe enough in our bodies to know what we're really knowing. And see that the whole field starts to get flooded again with this sense of like, I guess I would call it shame. Like it's very strong what's coming in here. What keeps coming in of this, when I say to know, trust that you know what you are knowing, there's almost an energy of like, oh God, if I had just trusted myself. It's not that, because there has been so much programming and conditioning here, right? This isn't to say like shame on you for not trusting yourself enough. That's not it at all. That is the farthest thing from it. And yet also those are the systems we have been indoctrinated through in order to try and fix ourselves. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like this unending chain of shame. Like it comes in so many different ways that we get caught up in. This is what I'm saying. Like the past doesn't really matter anymore. It's right where we are. And can we just hold into this feeling? Knowing that that is really enough to pull us through here. That as long as we don't reach and strive back into that negativity and the trauma and all of those things, we're going to be okay. I mean, we're going to be okay regardless, right? But this energy keeps resurfacing almost every time we get to a point where it's like, oh, yes, I've got it. What if I don't? The truth is you can't not get it. Thank goodness. Like, thank goodness that the body is designed to do what it does. And I think I said this in maybe my last video. If you're struggling, it's to be curious, right? To almost, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but let me just be like curious. Let me pretend this is an experiment, right? What would happen if instead of every day when I woke up and instead of reminding myself of all the things I didn't accomplish and beating myself up and all of the things that need my attention, what if I tried something different? What if I just loved myself a little bit more and I took 5 seconds and I loved my bed because it supported me throughout the night, and I loved my pillows because they were nice and soft and they brought me a lot of comfort? What if I just did that for 5 seconds? And the funny thing is, right, like those things actually make us feel better, but there is an awful, weird need, right, that's been set inside of us to not allow ourselves these things. So at this point, it's like we're not really fighting against the systems anymore, right? We're really fighting against our own selves, or the self within us that has been created out of those systems, right? We've been weaponized against ourselves. And that's what's so powerful about the nervous system, right? It will continue to run these things until we tell them not to. And then that's like the big secret, right? Like these things take on a life of their own inside of us simply because we believe them to be true. And simply because we see others around us running the same programs. And also because we don't even realize the programs that we're running, right? It's like I just thought I was being, a disciplinarian, maybe. It's like, do I really need to say that? Do I really need to say it in that tone of voice? Do I really even like, also, do I have to be a disciplinarian? Like, maybe that child actually just knows on its own. Maybe I'm causing additional problems by assuming that it needs to be told what's right for it, right? Like, we can experiment with all facets of our life, with all facets of our experience in this life, and come up with our own conclusions. And if you come into new answers, that's for you to use in your reality. Like I said, I stumbled across this weird thing where I started asking questions in my journal and I started getting answers. And then I started to think, okay, well, where have I been afraid to ask questions, ask bigger questions? And so I've started to experiment with that. I got some proof of something, right? And I'm like, let's go with this. Let's see what happens. But I think a lot of what happens in our lives is that we don't actually see these things, or we don't take note of where results are happening for us. We're looking at it in terms of these usual, where's my bank account, or how am I feeling today, or what is the what right? Like the metrics that we're using actually are maybe not the most beneficial, or maybe we're just not able to see, right? It's kind of like where I said, like, I didn't realize, like, oh my God, I actually asked for this, like, but it was so subconscious, or maybe so beneath my radar that I had no idea what I was trying to create, right? So becoming more cognizant. I wonder if this is true, right? Like, because we're so good at disregarding our knowing, and so good at not following the good feeling thoughts that we have, right? And so good at not doing the, oh, maybe I should just take the day off and do that. Like, I wonder if we followed those things, and if we recorded them, and if we kept track of them, if we would start to experience things differently. If we became curious about our own experiences in this reality, rather than, what the world thinks our experience should be every day. I think that we would start to see greater evolution. Again, it goes back to this like potency, right? That superpower, that kind of supercharged expansion. Okay, I can start to feel things slowing down here finally. So I hope you've gotten something out of this. It just seemed really like there was so much pressure to come in, and the way I experience, of course, is resistance, but maybe I'm not even using the right word there, right? Maybe what I want to call resistance, because it feels awful to me, is it's a nudge, it's a push from the energies to come in. And other people have said, oh, it's resistance, I just keep seeing this like magnifying glass, right? Like, look more closely at what you're saying, how you're talking about your experience, how you're talking about your reality. Look more closely at, well, and maybe not look, it's almost a sense of feel more deeply into your own self of what you are actually wanting, because there's a feeling that we're wanting and desiring things which we're not even allowing ourselves to like hear in our own ears, right? And sometimes this is where we're like, it's a call from the heart, or like a longing, or something like this. But I would imagine that if we really start to tune in to our bodies and listen and provoke those things out of us, is how it's coming through. I think we're going to start to have a much greater experience within our own realities. Because it's almost like we can't even hear our own selves, right? Through all of this. There has been so much fear and programming and all of these things layered on top of us. Okay, this is where I'm going to leave it today. I love you all so very much. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all of your comments. I'm going to go back and read all of those for sure. Your participation and your energy. And I am so excited for where we are going. But I do know like it's taking some reorientation, and that's what I'm so happy to be here to be moving through this with all of you. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take good care, and we'll talk soon.